You twist the key on a freezing Tuesday morning. The engine roars to life. You immediately yank the shifter into drive, and you mash the gas pedal to merge into heavy traffic. You probably think modern cars are indestructible and built to handle this exact scenario. But what you are actually doing is shaving thousands of miles off your engine's lifespan every single morning. Most drivers think high RPMs on the track or towing heavy loads are what destroy an engine, but the truth is far more mundane. The maximum amount of wear and tear your engine will ever experience happens in the first 60 seconds after you turn the key. When your car sits overnight, gravity pulls almost all of the motor oil down into the oil pan. The cylinder walls, the camshafts, the piston rings, all the crucial moving parts at the very top of the engine are left practically dry. When you start the car and instantly rev it, those cold metal components are grinding against each other with almost zero lubrication. Mechanics literally call this the cold death of an engine, and it happens completely silently. Microscopic scratches form on the cylinder walls, eventually leading to a loss of compression and severe oil burning later in the vehicle's life. But it is not just about the oil. Engine components are made of different metals, primarily aluminum and cast iron, and they expand at different rates as they heat up. When you force a freezing cold engine to work hard, the pistons heat up and expand faster than the cylinder block, leading to piston slap and severe scoring. A seasoned driver knows to start the car and just sit there for about 20 to 30 seconds. That is all it takes for the oil pump to push that vital fluid all the way up through the galleys to the top of the cylinder head. After that, you want to drive it gently, keeping the engine under 2,500 revolutions per minute for the first few miles until the coolant temperature gauge starts moving. Think of your engine like an Olympic sprinter. You would never ask a sprinter to run a marathon without stretching first. This is exactly why city taxicabs routinely blast past 250,000 miles without breaking a sweat. Their engines are always running, always hot, and always lubricated. It is the short trips and the brutal cold starts that slowly kill your daily driver. Speaking of things that slowly kill your car, we need to talk about one of the biggest lies the automotive industry has ever sold you. But right before we get into the dirty technical details of your drivetrain, if you want to keep your ride out of the repair shop and save yourself thousands in mechanic bills, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to join the garage. Now, let us talk about the concept of lifetime fluids, specifically when it comes to your automatic transmission. If you look in your owner's manual, you might see a section claiming that your transmission is a sealed unit and the fluid never needs to be changed for the life of the vehicle. This is a marketing gimmick designed to lower the estimated cost of ownership on paper so they can sell more cars to fleet buyers. The reality inside your transmission is vastly different. An automatic transmission is basically a massive hydraulic pump packed with planetary gear sets, friction clutches, and a complex maze of tiny channels called a valve body. Every time your car shifts gears, those clutch packs slip just a tiny bit to make the transition smooth, shedding microscopic friction material into the fluid. Furthermore, the fluid inside your torque converter shears under extreme heat and heavy loads. Over time, that bright red, highly viscous transmission fluid breaks down and turns into a dark, gritty, burnt-smelling syrup. When you leave this degraded fluid in the transmission for 100,000 miles, that grit starts acting like liquid sandpaper. It carves up the delicate electrical solenoids and clogs the narrow passages in the valve body, starving the clutches of the hydraulic pressure they need to grip. Eventually, you start experiencing harsh gear engagements, a heavy clunk when shifting into reverse, or the dreaded transmission slip where the engine revs wildly but the car barely accelerates. By the time those symptoms appear, changing the fluid is usually too late because that abrasive grit might be the only thing providing friction. The smart move, the one that keeps drivetrains running smoothly for decades, is to ignore the lifetime fluid myth entirely. You should have a simple drain and fill performed on your transmission fluid every 50,000 to 60,000 miles. It is a relatively inexpensive maintenance item that prevents a catastrophic $4,000 transmission rebuild down the road. Another massive mistake millions of drivers make every single week is playing the low fuel light bingo. We all know someone who constantly drives around with the fuel needle hovering just above the empty line, squeezing every last drop out of the tank before finally pulling into the gas station. A lot of people think this is a harmless habit, but you are actually playing Russian roulette with one of the most expensive and frustrating components to replace: your electric fuel pump. Your fuel pump sits completely submerged inside the gas tank. It is a high-pressure electric motor that works incredibly hard, and like any electric motor, it generates a significant amount of heat. The engineers designed it so that the surrounding liquid gasoline acts as a massive cooling bath, keeping the internal windings of the pump at a safe operating temperature. When you constantly drive with less than a quarter tank of gas, that pump is exposed to the air inside the tank. It loses its cooling jacket and starts to run dangerously hot. Do this often enough, and the internal components of the pump will literally melt and short out, leaving you stranded on the side of the highway with a car that cranks but will not start. But heat is not the only enemy lurking in an empty tank. Over the years, microscopic dirt, debris, rust flakes, and condensation settle at the very bottom of your fuel tank. When you drain the tank dry, The pump is forced to suck up all that heavy sludge. While there is a nylon strainer at the pickup tube, the finest particles still make it through the mesh, slowly clogging your inline fuel filters, and eventually making their way up to your delicate fuel injectors. You will start to notice a rough idle, weird hesitations when you try to accelerate, and a general loss of engine power that feels like the car is bogging down. Experienced drivers treat the quarter tank mark as the absolute new empty line. The moment the needle hits a quarter, they stop and fill it up. This simple habit maintains optimal fuel system pressure, keeps the pump ice cold, and guarantees a smooth, reliable fuel delivery for the life of the car. This leads us directly to the absolute core of engine longevity, a topic where almost everyone is following the wrong advice and unknowingly destroying their internal engine component. But right before I reveal the real truth about your engine's most critical maintenance schedule, take a quick second to hit subscribe so you do not miss our next deep dive. If you are strictly following the owner's manual and taking your car in for an oil change every 10,000 miles, you probably think you are being a responsible, textbook car owner. The harsh reality is that this extended interval is quietly destroying your engine from the inside out. Those 10,000-mile intervals are calculated in pristine laboratory conditions with engines running at optimal highway speeds for hours on end, or by engineers pressured by corporate executives to make the car look cheaper to maintain. But your car does not live in a corporate spreadsheet. Your car sits in gridlock traffic, idles in the coffee shop drive-thru, endures freezing winters, and takes 5-minute trips to the grocery store where the engine block never even reaches proper operating temperature. All of these real-world factors completely alter the chemistry and molecular structure of your motor oil. When you do a lot of short trips, your engine runs rich. Unburnt fuel and moisture from condensation bypass the piston rings and mix directly with the oil sitting in the oil pan. This phenomenon is called fuel dilution. It literally thins out the oil, destroying its viscosity and its ability to create a hydrodynamic protective wedge between the heavy-moving metal parts like the crankshaft journals and rod bearings. Modern engines also use direct injection, which creates a massive amount of hard soot particles that get trapped in the oil, turning it into a highly abrasive sludge. After about 5,000 miles of typical city driving, that oil has lost a massive percentage of its protective additives, detergents, and shear strength. It might not make a strange ticking noise right away, but microscopic metal shavings are quietly accumulating in the oil galleys and clogging the variable valve timing solenoids. Any honest mechanic will tell you that when they pull the dipstick on a car after 10,000 miles, the oil is pitch black, feels watery between the fingers, and smells distinctly like raw gasoline. You should never change your motor oil based purely on the maximum number printed in a manual. You have to change it based on your actual driving habits and environment. If you are stuck in stop-and-go traffic, dealing with extreme weather, or doing mostly city driving, you need to dump that oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. Sure, doing this means you might spend an extra $50 or $60 a year on oil changes, but it is the absolute cheapest insurance policy you can buy for your engine. Oil is the lifeblood of your vehicle. Leave the same tired, diluted blood in there for too long, and internal rusting, timing chain stretch, and catastrophic bearing failure become unavoidable. And while we are talking about keeping the heart of your car running perfectly, let us look at the ignition system, specifically your spark plugs. So many people completely ignore their spark plugs until the car starts violently shaking at a stoplight or the check engine light starts flashing on the dashboard. A spark plug is an incredibly hard-working component. It has to fire thousands of times every single minute, surviving inside a combustion chamber that experiences extreme pressure and blistering heat. Over time, the tiny metal electrode at the tip of the plug physically wears away, vaporizing bit by bit, making the gap between the center and ground electrode wider and wider. When that gap gets too large, the ignition coil has to work twice as hard to build up enough voltage to push a spark across the divide. You might not notice the occasional misfires right away, but the engine computer does. A weak spark means incomplete combustion, which leaves unburnt fuel sitting inside the cylinder. That raw fuel washes the crucial protective oil film right off the cylinder walls, massively increasing friction and piston ring wear. Even worse, that unburnt fuel gets pushed straight out of the exhaust valves and directly into your catalytic converter. A catalytic converter is a ridiculously expensive piece of emissions equipment that easily costs over $1,500 to replace. And raw fuel will superheat and melt its internal ceramic honeycomb structure in a matter of months. Swapping out a set of spark plugs is one of the easiest jobs you can do. It usually costs less than $50 in parts and takes an hour of your time on a Saturday afternoon with basic hand tools. Doing this preventatively, around the 60,000-mile mark, saves your expensive ignition coils from burning out, protects your catalytic converter from a fiery death, and restores that sharp, snappy throttle response and fuel economy the car had when it was brand new. Taking care of a vehicle is not about having a degree in mechanical engineering or spending every weekend covered in grease. It is simply about understanding the harsh environment your engine operates in and taking preemptive action instead of waiting for something to snap, break, or catch fire. Whether it is letting the engine warm up for 30 seconds to prevent cold start wear, ignoring the dealership's lifetime fluid myth to save your transmission, keeping the gas tank above a quarter to cool your fuel pump, slicing those ridiculous factory oil change intervals in half to prevent sludge, or staying on top of your ignition system before it destroys your exhaust, these small shifts in your daily habits are the difference between a car that dies a painful death at 100,000 miles and a car that runs flawlessly for decades. Let me know what you are dealing with right now. Drop your car's year, make, model, and any weird symptoms, noises, or fault codes in the comments below so we can figure it out together. And if you want to keep learning the real mechanical secrets to making your car last forever, hit that subscribe button one last time, and I will see you in the garage next time.